Hey gang, Kevin here, Life22. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us some of your nasty messages. We like those. But you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, obviously YouTube, and all the like. We are reviewing today the Once and Future King by T.H. White. But also, because it's coming up, we're heading down south. We're hitting Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Kentucky. We're going to hit Mecca for us conservatives. We're going to check out the Daily Wire, or at least do, photo bombing in front of it, like click, 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 we're bow to Mecca. And then we are headed to Corbin, Kentucky for the Bluegrass Bash, which is a jiu-jitsu tournament by the ASJL. And that'll be on the following Saturday. We're going to try to do some live streams, take some photos, get some good content for you guys, do some of the fights, watch Kevin get the shit kicked out of him. I think it'll be a good time. So, regardless of that, I want to get into the Once and Future King by T.H. White. So most of you probably know this story because of the first book in the box set. And the box set is broken down into 5 pieces. Most publishers are putting it into a four-banger because book 5 it's a little preachy. This was also last month's book from the Third Thursday Book Club, if you follow the Daily Wire at all. We just finished it. It's one of those things I'm always behind. Like right now I'm just reading Moby Dick. I probably won't even have it read in time for the book club deadline. And drinking Bloody Marys, but I ran out of mix, so a little salsa and cranberry juice for filler. Yuck. Yeah, so regretting. Anyways, so its box set is broken down into 5 books, and I always have to clarify because I listen to it as one big audio file, so I don't. But most of you know this book from the first book in the series, which is The Sword and the Stone. Right, so it's the story of Wart becoming King Arthur, meeting Merlin, going through his trials and tribulations, him being turned into multiple different animals to understand how the world works, to get his education. The Witch in the Wood is a bunch of questing stories that happened during the times of King Arthur and King Pellinore and Gawain and a bunch of other different stories about that. Then you have the Ill-Made Knight, which essentially is the story of Sir Lancelot, how his love lust and adultery and betrayal of friendship with King Arthur, who was like a father and a friend to him. He tears it down, and they have an affair. And they have a back and forth love for one another, and this spillover. It should be an affair, and then he gets stuck on a quest, and he saves a young maiden from. She's like in a bathtub full of ice or something like that. She was frozen to death or something along those lines. And he, as a virgin, he saved her. And one of the butlers, I guess you'd say, it was like not a handsmaid but a dude maid. One of the servants gives him a love spell in his brandy and gets him drunk. And he goes and he wakes up next to Elaine, the woman he saved. And so Elaine got pregnant, and now he's not a virgin anymore, so he loses his virginity to her. They talk about this in the story too, is how Lancelot's like a bulldog, trustworthy, loyal, has that look on his face, but is just repugnant, right? Like you don't want to kiss a bulldog, right? Like they make him out to be this homely looking dude, but everybody loves him because he's badass and he can kill mofos, right? Like he can slice them up, he can joust, he can get his ass kicked. He's like John McClane, all shot up and stuff, and he's still fighting to the end. He's Jason Statham from Crank. He's impenetrable. This guy, he's just like, and he dies of old age. Like it's funny. But he has a son with Elaine, which is Sir Galahad, and then he has this back and forth, love triangle with with Queen Guinevere, who is King Arthur's wife, and King Arthur knows what's going on, and they never end up together because the author tries to allude that they're being punished by God for not following his mandates, his dictates, and but it's the struggle of man. It's the he did so well for so long, being fighting his urges and his yada yada, but it didn't stop him from following Queen Guinevere. And it was just it was one of those things. They never ended up together. He died. He died of old age in prayer. He had given himself to the church. She became a nun. She never had children. Their love affair ruined. Poor Elaine. She was a young girl who was somewhat attractive, and then she became just kind of like started becoming more homely and less capped up, and became on and off fat throughout the novel. Towards the end, she was about to be a nun, and then she fell out of it when Sir Lancelot came back, and then they hung out for a little bit. They were hanging out for a minute. You know how it goes, and it was one of those things like his love for Queen Guinevere had destroyed this poor girl's life, and they had a son who died during the Crusades, fighting for Arthur at the Round Table, just like Lancelot was doing, but Sir Galahad just didn't have what it takes. And I mean, everybody, it's just. But then again, it's most of these trials and tribulations are tragedies, and in most Shakespearean tragedies, everyone dies at the end. Everybody. There's like one or two dudes at the end just to tell a story. Like, oh yeah, that's right, I was there. There's me and what the hell was her name? You know what I mean? Like, and they just there's two people left over. Everybody else is just some 20-minute they got stabbed in the heart, and 20 minutes later, after their speech is over, they cough out. That was good. That was good. They'll get the stains out of me pants. A little tomato juice in case I get sprayed by a skunk later. And then the last book in this, so we talked about The Ill-Made Knight, which is book 3. Let's see here. The Candle in the Wind. And then the Book of Merlin. And the Book of Merlin it kind of comes back and it talks about, it kind of recaps everything, but it also takes King Arthur back in, he takes King Arthur back in for another bout of learning from the animal kingdom. He learns about how ants work, and it is very preachy. It talks about how the ants are totalitarian system, the communism. We must fight for the queen. We must fight for the queen. Our queen is the best queen. It is very Orwellian, like Animal Farm. This is the best. We must fight for the pigs. That's. And it talks about that, and then he's in the I forget the name of it, the den of time, where Merlin hangs out with a representative soul of each animal from the animal kingdoms, at least from the higher of them. There's not an ant there, but there's the badger and a peregrine falcon, and I think Archibald. But he doesn't like to be called Archie. They're very prim and proper. So I'd like to go through some quotes, other than giving you a rundown of the book. It's a 30 to 32 hour listen if you do it on Audible. It is a long book. So The Once and Future King by T.H. White. Let's see here. Chapter 5 in the Audible sequential order of their chapters, which I think went up to like 110 chapters. But education is experience, and the essence of experience is self-reliance. I like this quote. This is a great quote. Education is experience. So it's saying you just can't go read a book, right? Like, education is experience. You must experience something to be educated in it. And the essence of experience is self-reliance. So you must rely on yourself to do it. If you rely on other people to do something for you, you're not gaining experience by it. Hence, you're not being educated. Great quote. One sentence. It is an epic one-sentence quote. Just before chapter 20, giants are 10.5. This is not a quote, but this is kind of an experience. Giants are 10.5 feet tall, which I found very interesting because people were also very small back then. But they go into a room and King Arthur goes, "That's a giant. The guy's like 10.5 feet tall." And he goes, and Merlin looks at him and goes, "How big do you think giants are? Like, how big do giants have to be?" Like, he goes, "They can't be this big because they got to eat a lot." And he goes, "They start like just think how much food they would have to eat to be huge like that, like 30 feet tall, and like they'd be eating trees. They'd just be pulling them out of the ground, eating them." Like, that's what he kind of points out, and like the arthritis of it, and like the amount of food. Like, it's just, in the world of dinosaurs, right? Like, T-Rexes were huge, but so were all the other dinosaurs, even the ones that ate vegetables. Them mofos were huge. Like, so you gotta think, like, they were huge. So if a T-Rex caught Brontosaurus, like, I got food for a week. Giants, like, 10.5 feet tall. And then you gotta think, like, they call them giants, but they were probably just, like, hideously tall people that were exiled from society. And people were really small back then. You remember, like, I remember being a kid, like, learning about, like, like, settlers, and, like, the average height of people was, like, 5 foot tall was tall. We got a foot on them, 2 feet on them, and, you know what I mean? Like, those are, like, it's nothing for somebody to be 6 foot nowadays. But back when people were just, when the Mayflower was here, people were like 4.5, 5 feet tall. Like, that was common. So for giants to be 10.5 feet tall, that's you know what I mean. That's double their size. That's pretty intimidating. I just thought that was interesting. Chapter 31. They actually talk about, like, fighting unicorns. They say they have to tussle with a unicorn, and what the author makes the reader aware of is that unicorns, as Merlin does, because Merlin travels through time, back and forth through time. He has to let time exist how it exists because it has to happen, otherwise it doesn't happen. But he lets the reader know that unicorns are rhinoceroses. And he goes to an ill-bred culture like this, or an uneducated culture like we have here, they have not been discovered as rhinoceroses. Which I was like, wow, that is, like, wow, how clever, right? Like, maybe unicorns were a horse with a fucking thing on their head years ago, but he points out that it's very plausible that they could be rhinoceroses. And I thought that was very interesting. And now we're getting into some really, like, this next one, chapter 51, the sixth sense is balance, and the seventh is knowledge of the world. Let that soak in for a second. So you have 5 senses, right? Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, right? There's your 5. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. Those are the 5 senses, right? This is the 6th sense. It's not a Bruce Willis movie. And this came out well before M. Night Shyamalan. The 6th sense is balance. Wow. Like, think about that in and of itself. the idea of balance in this realm, balance amongst other things. If some people don't have a sixth sense, some people are very uncoordinated, but the ability for you to have a sixth sense that is balance, I just, wow, that's good stuff. The seventh sense is knowledge of the world. So to be educated, for your ability to gain knowledge of the world in order to utilize it and manipulate your surroundings, that is an amazing way. Like sometimes you read classic literature and there's just all these little things that you're like, it takes some people a lifetime just to come up with that. Now, did T.H. White come up with everything that's in this book? Maybe not. Maybe he heard it from some guy down at the local tavern on this or that, and then he writes them down. And that guy's never going to become famous, so I'm just going to combine all in this book. And essentially he gets credit for it, even though, you know what I mean? Like, but it would have fallen by the wayside, and no one would have known or said these things. And I mean, like, just even to come up with the six senses balance, like, you could philosophize your whole life and never come up with something that profound. Like, it's amazing. So that was one of my favorite little excerpts from the book. The sixth sense is balance, and the seventh is knowledge of the world. Loved it. Chapter 99. Here's a quote. But life is not invented for happiness. I do not believe. It is meant for something else. And that was... We're going to have to shut down soon. Camera's getting warm. Yeah, it was... life is not invented for happiness. I do believe. It is meant for something else. And what it was meant for, he doesn't specify. But this is during the Book of Merlin, when Merlin asks King Arthur if he wants to live forever, and he talks about how the outer frame of his brain, the outer layer of his brain, will become tough like shoe leather versus spongy like the brain of a child, and he could go back and relive his life. And he goes, that would be nice, and that would make me happy. But life is not meant for happiness. I do not believe. It is meant for something else, and that's the context of that. And that is a good takeaway. And it's a good way to end this book. So keep reading. You don't have to be happy. It's a nice goal. But it's like instant pleasure, right? You can become a heroin addict and get all the instant pleasure you want, followed by great droughts of big droughts from happiness. Or you could just live your life mostly happy and mostly peaceful, and take that to the bank. Life is not meant for happiness, so stop chasing it, right? You can pursue it, but it's the pursuit of happiness, not happiness itself. I'll end you with something that I thought about this week, hopefully before this camera gets too warm and dies. Peace is defined by war. I thought about this, and I came to this revelation. Without war, you would have no peace. And what is peace but the time between war? So if you had no war, you'd also have no peace. I don't know what you would have, but it is something to think about. And I will leave you with that, as I hope you are getting off this podcast stream, and then you are pressing the like and subscribe button and running out and getting yourself a copy of The Once and Future King by T.H. White. And we'll catch you guys next time, and we'll see you this week in Kentucky.